hear me? All right, there we are. Hey, if you are in kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, you are dismissed. Your leaders are right over here. They're going to take you right on the other side of the building over there. K through 6, you are dismissed. Have a great time. Everybody else, how you doing? Been all right? So far, so good? A lot of waving out there. I hear you. Hey, if you've got a Bible, hopefully you do Psalm 37 and 73. Psalm 37 and 73 is where we're going to be. So this Psalm 37 is just full of so much help. It's something that I have run to, have come to so many times. If you've been coming to FBC for any amount of time, you've probably heard me quote Psalm 37 multiple times, particularly verse 4, the verse really we're going to kind of hang out on today. But 37 has been it's just a real help. We've been walking through Psalms, the first book of Psalms, which is, there's 5 books in all of the Psalms, and all 150. It's contained 5 books. It's a collection of 5 books, and we've been walking through the first book, which ends at Psalm 41, and so at the end of Church and Alon, Lord willing, we will be done with Psalms and launching into something new in September. But I hope that it's been a help to you. It certainly has been a help to me just walking through it. But Psalm 37, we're going to jump right in. He says this. He says, "Fret not yourself because of evil doers." Now, fret. He uses the word fret. David uses the word fret 3 times in the first 8 verses, and he uses it in a way to say it means to burn with anger. I think oftentimes when I think of fret, I'm thinking like the worry side of fret. But he's talking about the anger side of fret. He says, don't fret not yourself, or do not be angry. Do not worry yourself to anger. What's he getting at? So anytime that you see, when you read the scripture and you're seeing something that is repeated, it's good to pay attention. All right, it's good to pay attention to wherever that is. He's trying to say something. And so what is he saying? What's he getting at when he says, "Fret not yourself with evildoers"? Well, he's not simply talking about being upset at evil. That would seem kind of the obvious thing that we would draw from that. That he don't be so upset at evil, at people who do evil things. But actually, he's going further than that, and he says, "Do not fret or fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers." So David writes this song to say, I want you to be careful of something. I want you to watch out for something. I want you to be careful. There's something that if you're not careful, you will fall into. So I'm writing this song to just help you to remember to not fall into this. Don't fall into fretting over the evildoers and being envious over wrongdoers. Now, why would anybody be envious of wrongdoers? Why do we need a song to tell us to not be envious of wrongdoers? Well, there's another guy named Asaph who wrote a song as well, Psalm 73. And Asaph gives us some insight on what David is talking about here. Because the song that Asaph writes, he says this. He's not giving a warning. He's going, I almost did. I almost fell into this. I almost went right into this. I almost fell right into this trap. I almost fell into giving up on faith altogether because of what I saw happening with the evildoers around me. In Asaph's song, Psalm 73, he tells us why. If you want to flip one over, he says, in verse 1, he says, "Truly God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled. My steps had nearly slipped. For I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." He says, for they have no pangs until death. Their bodies are fat and sleek. They are not in trouble as others are. They are not stricken like the rest of mankind. He's going, look, I'm looking around, and I see people living their lives for the glory of God, trying to live, godly, faithful lives. They're being generous, but yet they are suffering. They're the ones that are working hard and getting passed over for at work for the promotion. They're the ones that are sitting the bench. They're the ones who are talked about. They're the ones who are being persecuted at the hands of those who couldn't care less about God. I'm looking around, I'm seeing all the faithful, all the godly, like they're suffering. This is what I'm seeing as I'm looking around. It's like, I don't know if you've read or heard about this, but in last month, the first week of July, there was in the Matai village in Kaduna, Nigeria, the terrorists came through, burned down 4 churches and hundreds of homes in the village, and then killed 33 people. Well, if that wasn't enough, they kidnapped 153 kids from Bethel Baptist School in Kaduna, Nigeria. One of the pastors in the region received a note from this group that read this. It said, we will kill you like goats. We know your house, your church, and even your family. And Asaph is looking around going, this is what I'm seeing happening everywhere. I'm looking at all the bad guys winning. I'm seeing the people that are trying to follow God, that fear God, those that are trying to trust and live a righteous life. I see they are the ones who are suffering. The faithful ones are the ones that are dealing with disease and sickness and pain all of their lives. And Asaph is going, everything just seems to be hard for the ones who are trying to be godly, trying to live a faithful life. While in the meantime, everywhere I go, it seems like the arrogant, wicked people are the ones that are winning. Like, it seems like they're the ones whose life is going well. They're the ones whose life, they've got it easy. They're not in pain. They're not suffering. They're living this fat, comfortable life. And so Asaph's going, so what's up with that? What's up with that? Why are those that are calling on God, they're the ones suffering, and those that couldn't care less about God, they're the ones that seem to be living a good, comfortable life. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever, you're like, I'm trying to live a life, but everywhere I look, it seems as though it's those that are trying to live a faithful life, following the Lord. They're the ones that are getting passed over. They're the ones that are being persecuted. Those are the ones that are suffering. They're the ones who are in pain. And yet, it seems like all the ones that could care less are getting away with it. And David's going, in Psalm 37, he's going, I get it. I get it. It seems as though life is just a crapshoot. And you just kind of roll the dice, and it seems like more often than not, the dice are rolled and they fall in favor of the wicked. But don't fret, David says. Don't fall into anger and don't fall into envy because of what you see. And for the rest of Psalm 37, David is going to tell us how to deal with this. How do you deal with this reality? What do you do when life just seems so unjust? What do you do when life just seems so random? Particularly when it seems like all the breaks go to the bad guys and the God-fearers, the faithful, are always struggling. What do you do? Well, in a nutshell, David says this in verse 4. He says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Delight yourself in the Lord. But the way to keep from falling into anger and envy over what just seems to be the crapshoot of life is by delighting in the Lord. Now, I don't know about you, but I hear that, and I'm going, I don't know how helpful that is. I mean, I'm looking around, I'm seeing what's going on. You're telling me just delight myself in the Lord? I don't know how helpful that is because delighting in something, like how do you just tell somebody to delight in something? Like that has to do with feeling something. That's an emotion. You can't just like turn on an emotion. You can't just flip the delight switch and say, oh, okay, I'll delight in the Lord. So then how do you do this? How do you delight in the Lord? How do you get to the place where you delight in the Lord? Well, David spends the rest of this song telling us how, but he sums it up in these first few verses. Actually, he sums it up in just one line in verse 3. How do you get to the place where you're not fretting over what you see happening, where you're not just ticked off that the undeserving people are getting all the breaks? How do you live with this? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the fact that everybody else that seems like they're living an ungodly, unfaithful life are getting all the things that you want? David is saying that the way to delighting in the Lord, he'll say this, he says, is by trusting in the Lord and by doing good. It's trusting in the Lord and by doing good. Trusting in the Lord and doing good. In the first part of verse 3, trust in the Lord and do good. The rest of Psalm 37 is David saying, this is how you survive what just seems to be the injustice of life. Trust in the Lord and do good. So first, trust in the Lord. There are three aspects of trust that play into delighting in the Lord. If you're going to delight in the Lord, there's three aspects of trust that we've got to see that this is what trust looks like. First is this: whether or not we like it, or whether or not we see it or not, or we like it or not, something that gets exposed when anger and jealousy rise up in us is the reality that we've been trusting in something else. When we get angry about something, when we feel the jealousy rise up in us, especially when we see something, somebody else getting something that we think that we should have, what's happening is the reality is being what's being surfaced is the thing that we're putting our trust in. Now we might say that we trust the Lord, but when certain things come to other people, like success, recognition, good health, more money, a marriage, another kid, and it angers you or causes you to be envious, listen, you need to pay attention to that. You need to pay attention. There's a reason that feeling has risen up in you, because what's happening in you is that what you're putting your trust in is being exposed. When you get angry, when you get jealous over something that somebody else got, what is happening is God is in his mercy is revealing the thing that you've been putting your trust in. And it will be impossible for you to delight in the Lord if you're trusting in, if you're delighting in other things. Believing that somehow if you had that thing or those things, that they would somehow provide your best shot at happiness or fulfillment. So trusting in the Lord, it looks like trusting that Jesus is better. That he's just better than that. He's better than any of those things. Well, the second aspect of trust has to do with admitting that you and I, we just can't see the whole picture. It just comes to, it's just admitting that, hey, look, there's a reality that I just can't see. There is something behind the veil that I'm not aware of, but that God sees it all. He sees what's behind the veil. He sees the spiritual reality of angels and demons, and he sees the beginning and the end and everything in between, and he is working it all out for my good and for his glory. So part of trusting God is going, look, I don't see it all. I don't know what's happening behind that. I see what I see, but I don't know what's happening behind that. I don't know what's happening behind the veil. In Psalm 73, Asaph tells us about when he thought that God didn't know what he was doing. He's going, God, I'm just looking around and I'm seeing the wicked win and I'm seeing the faithful suffer, and it just seems to me, God, that you've kind of lost control. Your hands are off the wheel, man. And he said this, he said, but when I began to realize what was happening, he said, I realized something about myself that caused me to think that God was not in control, that he had lost it. He says it in verse 21 and 22 in Psalm 73. He said, when my soul was embittered, when I was pricked in heart, I was brutish and ignorant. And check this. He said, I was like a beast towards you, God. I was like a beast towards you. Some of you may have heard of Elizabeth Elliot. She was a Christian writer, missionary, and I shared some of her husband's story a few weeks ago, but she would tell this story of visiting friends of hers who in northern Wales who owned a sheep farm. And she said that the sheep are vulnerable to being eaten to death by insects and parasites. And so every year, once a year, her friend, who's the shepherd, would have to take his sheep into a huge vat. And I just picture something like this, that was filled with an antiseptic, and he would take a sheep one by one, and he would put the sheep into the vat, and like covering it all up, like the whole thing, putting it in there, and then turn it over, and with his hands over the eyes and over the ears, and he would put and over the nose, he would put the sheep, dunk the sheep again, flip it over, dunk it back into the water, and keep it under there for a few seconds. All the while, as you can imagine, the sheep is just flailing, like fighting the shepherd, trying to get out as he's holding on, trying to make the sheep go all the way under and keeping it under there. Well, if he doesn't do it, the sheep would eventually die. In the moment, though, that sheep is being put under, the moment that sheep the sheep has got to be thinking, my shepherd has no idea what he's doing. My shepherd is an awful shepherd. I need another shepherd. He has no clue what he's doing. And if I could just get out here, I'd kill him. But if the shepherd is the higher being in this relationship, then it would make sense that there are a lot of things that the shepherd does that won't make sense to the sheep. But the sheep have no self-awareness. They don't have the capability to think, well, maybe the shepherd just knows things about the way life goes and I just don't know, so I'll just trust him. The sheep don't think that. They have no way of thinking that. They don't have any self-awareness. They don't have the ability to think like that. But listen, you and I do. But when we act like, God, you don't know what you're doing, this is completely unfair. When we do that, we're acting like sheep. Asaph said, I was being like a beast toward you, God. I didn't think about the fact that the hand that is binding me could be the hand that is saving me. Listen, if God is God, and not just a little bit bigger version of you, if God really is God, then wouldn't it make sense that he will do things that will make no sense to you? Someone once said, when you're dealing with God, you should never be confused about your confusion. Be confused. There will be times where you're going to be going, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why this is happening. Be confused. But never be confused about your confusion, about why you're confused. You and I are sinners. We are limited in what we know, and we're dealing with the God who sees it all and knows it all. So trusting in the Lord looks like trusting that he knows it all, that he isn't just rolling the dice, but he's doing something, that he's working it all out. And then the third aspect of trusting in the Lord is what David comes back to over and over in this psalm, and that is trusting that the good things coming to the arrogant and the wicked and the suffering that is coming to God's people, it won't always be this way. It's not going to always be this way. There is coming a day, and he says in verse 6 in 37, in chapter 37, he says, he will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil, for the evildoer shall be cut off. But those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while, the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant peace. The wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes his teeth at him, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees that his day is coming. The wicked draw the sword and bend their bows to bring down the poor and the needy, to slay those whose way is upright. Their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. Better is a little that the righteous has than the abundance of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. When David says to trust in the Lord, he's saying to trust that there is coming a day when he will set it all straight. He's going, look, I know in these days it can seem like it's all turned around, like the wicked are winning. I know the righteous suffer. I know cancer took them way too soon. I know your spouse left you and seems to be completely at peace while you're left trying to pick up the pieces. I know your coworker went behind your back, and God sees it all, David is saying. God sees all of it. And there is coming a day when God will bring justice. He will judge the living and the dead, and each will get what is coming to them. Now, I know, particularly in this generation, where we're in our culture, there are a lot of people who don't like the idea of God being a just God. We don't like the idea of what the Bible has to say about hell and a God who hands out justice. And listen, let's just be real. That comes from people who live in a first world country where we will gladly pay $6 for a cup of coffee, right? I don't like you saying that God is just. Well, tell that to the woman in Nigeria right now, whose kid is in the hands of terrorists. What's giving her any kind of hope right now is that there is a God who is just, and one day he will make this right. Some of you have gone through injustices and you're powerless to do anything about it. Listen, the God of the Bible is a God of justice, and he sees, and he will one day set it straight. And that is how you get up in the morning. And that is how you live your life free from despair and bitterness and anger and envy, because you have a God that sees all of it. He knows it all, and he will one day cause their arrow to be turned in on them, and he will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. How do we get to delighting in the Lord? One, trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord, not in a sentimental way, but trust him for your joy and fulfillment. Trust that he sees what you can't see, and he knows what you don't know, and that he is working it all out for your good and for his glory. And then trust that there is coming a day that he will set it all straight, and there will be justice. It's like, okay, so what do we do in the meantime? David says, well, do good. Do good. Trust in the Lord and do good. And then he says, dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Doing good moves the focus from you and on to somebody else. And that's a good thing. It's always a good thing to get your focus, to get your sight set off of you. Because the more that you make your life about you, the more miserable your life will become. Because listen, you know this. You know if your life is about you, you've got to always get people to get in on your plan for your life. Other people are just a means to your happiness, and when they don't cooperate, it just leaves you angry, bitter, and depressed. But when you befriend faithfulness in the place where you live, doing good in the place where you are, among the people where you live, in your neighborhood, at your job, at your school, in your home, when you put others' interests before your own interests, when you're not the point of your life, then you're free. This is why in a pandemic, Christians are the ones that can run to the front lines and say, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? It's why we were able to serve thousands upon thousands of meals over the last year, because a group of people were able to say, what does it look like to trust God in the midst of all of this? What does it look like to be faithful in the place where I live, that I'll just treat the needs of others as if they were my own needs, and I'll just trust the Lord with the rest? Do good in the place where you are, among the people where you live. Listen, the world is full of injustice. Where you work, where you go to school, where you live. The ones who do wrong, the ones who do whatever it takes to get ahead, to get whatever they want, they will run over whoever they need to run over. They will lie, they will cheat, they will abandon you, and from the looks of it, they're doing just fine. In the meantime, you're trying to be faithful, certainly not doing it perfect, stumbling along the way, but it sure does seem like you would be a lot better off if you would just enter into the fray. And so David gives us 37 and says, don't do it. Fret not yourself. Delight yourself in the Lord. Well, how does that happen? David says it begins by trusting the Lord. Trust the Lord. Trust that the Lord is better than pursuing anything else. Trust that he is better than comfort. He is better than success. That he is better than a bigger house, a newer car, a fat retirement. He is better than your kids' grades. He is better than your kids' awesome athletic ability. He is better than the next vacation. He is better than living for the weekend. He is better than the next drink, the next marriage, the next hookup. He's better than revenge. He's better than having the last word. He's better than good health. He's better than political freedom. He's better than popularity. And he's better than your family. Trust that Jesus is better than everything. When you trust him and him alone, you will find that he can calm your anxious and longing heart and can satisfy your life. I recently, just a few days ago, sat in a meeting with a coach at a university. And he was talking about the recruiting process that he uses. And he said, first and foremost, we're looking for kids with good character. That's what he said. This is the NCAA Division I school. He said, but first and foremost, we're looking for kids with good character. We want to know what kind of person they are. And so he says this. He says, so we go and we talk to as many people as we can. We talk to parents, coaches, whoever we can find. And then we go digging through their social media to see what they're about. He said this, look, if a kid's got some athletic ability, we can develop him. But we want kids with character in the locker room. And I thought about that. I wonder if someone followed me around, followed you around, talked to those who knew you the best, went digging around in your social media, peeked in on your conversations, what would they determine is the thing that you're trusting in? Because we say that we trust the Lord, right? I mean, we're Americans, for Pete's sake. It's all over our money. I mean, this is who we are. We just trust in the Lord. But when you pay attention to the way that you spend your time, the way that you spend your money, the conversations that you're always having, the things that just get you angry, the things that get you emotional. Listen, make no mistake, those are the things that reveal what you're putting your trust in. What are you trusting in? What does your life say about what you're trusting in? Trust in the Lord. Trust that the Lord is better. And trust that the Lord sees the bigger picture. He is good, and he is working it all out in ways that you and I cannot fully understand. And then trust that in the end, he will bring justice. He will bring justice. Trust in the Lord and do good. When you trust the Lord, you can get your eyes off of you and onto others. And David says this is how we come to delight in the Lord. And do you know what happens when you delight in the Lord? That he gives you new desires. He gives you new desires. Desires that don't long for the things that you feel like you're missing out on. He gives you new desires. Desires to make your life about the glory of God. He changes your desires to the right kind of desires. And it's not because anybody told you that you should change your desires. So anytime we baptize somebody, we have a one-on-one, we have a meeting. We just want to talk, to have a conversation about the gospel and about what God is doing in your life. And you know something that we don't say in that meeting is, okay, well, now that you profess Jesus as your Savior, as your King, here's some things that you need to do. Here's some new desires that you need to fulfill. No, that's not what this is. It's God does this. God is the one who gives you new desires. New desires. And so they're not just new desires. They're desires that line up with his desires. That your desires and his desires will look alike. And so all of a sudden, what you want and what God wants line up. And so God says, so what do you want? And when your desires are his desires, he's going, and I'll give you your heart's desire. Delighting in the Lord. Listen, being on the right side of justice in the end, and this is only possible because of one thing. You know, when we talk about the righteous, God upholding the righteous, justice for the righteous, God bringing forth your righteousness as the light. To be honest, well, for one, there's a lot of people that think that they're righteous. We can scroll through the social media feed right now. And just read through. A lot of people think they're righteous. A lot of people think that they're right about it. If everybody else would just come along with me and we're righteous. But listen, I mean, maybe you can look around at some others and go, well, I'm not as bad as them, and maybe feel a bit righteous about yourself. But listen, if the standard for righteousness is not that person, if the standard for righteousness is not that person that you're comparing yourself to, but if the standard for righteousness is actually God, well, when you know your own heart and you know the reality of your own thoughts and your own selfishness and your own pride the way I do, and you start to think, well, I'm not sure righteous really fits who I am. I don't know if this is really about me. The truth is that all of us, we're sinners. The truth is that all of us, we are the arrogant, wicked ones. That's us. We are the ones deserving of whatever is coming at us, ultimately deserving of the wrath of God that is coming at us, to have the sword turned in on us and cut us off from God forever. So what in the world keeps a person from facing what they deserve? Well, when Jesus came to this earth, he lived the life that we have not lived, the life that we couldn't live. He lived in perfect humility. and righteousness. And yet he was crucified as a criminal. And so if Jesus was righteous and didn't deserve death, what was Jesus doing when we talk about him being put to death? He was taking our place. He was taking what we deserved. The injustice that Jesus endured was for us, so that for anyone who calls on Jesus, this exchange would happen. That his death would be applied to our sin, that the sword that should have turned on us was actually turned on him. And in exchange, get this, his righteousness would be given to us, so that our position before God could be righteous, that we actually could be counted as the righteous. This is how we're counted as the righteous. That's how somebody has the ability to delight in God. That's how someone has the confidence that in the end, that they will be on the right side of justice and not cut off from God forever. It's for those who have trusted in the Lord for their salvation, trusted that Jesus took what they deserve by his death. And this is what we're celebrating today in baptism. That there are two people among us who have said, you know what? I see who I am. I see the reality of who I am, that I am the wicked. I am the arrogant one. I am the one that deserves what is coming at me, but I see that Jesus has come from out of God's mercy. He has sent Jesus. He has taken the sword for me. That he has taken my place and he has made me among the righteous. Not because of anything that I've done, but because of everything that Jesus has done. And so that's what we get to celebrate today with these two. But I wonder, what about you? What are you trusting in? Are you trusting in your own righteousness? Are you trusting that you're a conservative? That you're a Republican? That you're a Democrat? Or what are you trusting in? Where does your righteousness come from? If it's not Jesus, you're on the wrong side of justice. You don't want to be on that side of justice. But there is the offer today. There is the offer. You are here by God's mercy to hear that there is mercy. Jesus has come in our place for our sin, taken our sin, taken the sword for us. If you would trust in him, he would give you his righteousness. He would give you new life with new desires. Let's pray together.